was literally shaking mad yesterday. I couldn't even fall asleep because my adrenaline was so high because I was just so pissed off about this. We never did anything.
This is so crazy. Everything is just gone.
Didn't do this to make money, and the only thing we did this for is for the content, and now it's completely gone. It just baffles me.
Hi guys, it's Jessica and Savannah from Reptile Youth Alliance, and we wanted to jump on here and make a quick video. Up until recently, we were co-hosts of a podcast called Herpentine Radio, and some really crazy stuff happened in the last few days, and it's honestly hard to explain it. It's just really bizarre what transpired over the last few hours. So we're going to attempt to give you all of the facts that we know. We don't want to be making this video. Honestly, for me, I am very embarrassed that I fell victim to this kind of manipulation, and it's not something that I want to admit. But at the same time, I think it's really important to let others know what happened to us, because we were not the first people that this happened to. So I do think that we need to make this video, as much as neither one of us wants to make this video, but we're gonna try to give you everything that we know. We're still looking for answers on a lot of what happened, but I'm gonna let Savannah kind of start by giving a little bit of the background of Herpentine podcast.
Right. So we spent a year and a half on this podcast, and we interviewed amazing people on this podcast. So, it's a lot of people's time wasted. So kind of the history of it is Herpentine Radio's host reached out to me. I was breeding dwarf monitors and wanted to do a series on dwarf monitors. We also did a Tegu series. And it's funny, it just popped up on my history yesterday. It was literally 3 years ago I did the first interview. I loved the show. I was actually a listener afterwards. I hadn't really heard of it beforehand, to be honest with you. But then when I researched, even before I was on the podcast, they had amazing guests. I mean, I respected almost every single person that I saw. And if I did know their name and I looked them up, they definitely came back with amazing credentials. So fast forward to about a little over a year and a half ago, the host at the time posted a big message saying that that they were going to step away, that they enjoyed their time, but it was time to move on. And I just was like, dang, this had so many, amazing guests throughout the years and had been on for so long. It would be a shame that it would just kind of get buried. I mean, it might still be out there, but it wouldn't continue. So I reached out to the host and I said, hey, if you're ever interested in, having a co-host or passing along the torch, I'd definitely be interested. And the first thing that host said was that he actually wanted to pass along the torch. He wanted to have nothing to do with it. And then it kind of fast forwarded a little bit, and he seemed like he really just wanted to be a part of it, and he just wanted to kind of stay on the production side of it. So he suggested, because I'm a woman, that we do a women's Herper series. So we reached out to different people. He reached out to a lot of people that he had as previous guests, and I mentioned Jessica and I had known each other briefly. I used to breed panther chameleons, and I actually sold some babies to Jessica. So it was a great meeting, and we've kind of popped up into our timelines throughout since then. And I knew she had two stores on the east coast of Florida, so I thought she'd be a great guest. So, and you were, Jessica, you were an awesome guest. And at the time, my deal with JD was to help pay for my ownership of Herpentine Radio, is that I would send him bugs. So I had a reptile store at the time, so I was sending him 1,000 counts of crickets and 1,000 counts of superworms and hornworms and waxworms and everything in bulk. I paid for all the shipping myself. And that's what I did for a little over a year and a half, almost close to 2 years. When Jessica and I did our podcast, together, and he was kind of a part of it, but he was never really a part of the shows. He mostly did production side. Eventually I'd kind of push him to even introduce, just to have him part of the show, because I felt like he was kind of not really participating that much. But he suggested that Jessica and I co-host together, that it would be a great fit. And I was like, that sounds like a really good idea. And, fast forward, I'll kind of say later, why I think he did that now. But everything's been going good. Last year we we didn't really do that many podcasts towards the end of the year. Jessica and I did, Jessica did banners, and Jessica got all the equipment together. We did Croc Fest together. Jessica made t-shirts with sponsorship to people, to guests that wanted to be sponsored. Jessica and I never saw any sort of monetary. We weren't about that. We were really just about having the fun, being a part of this. But, obviously there was some sort of transactions that had to have, occurred for you to have sponsorship.
We were told in the beginning, we were told that there was sponsorships, that we would be receiving something for doing the podcast. But Savannah and I are on the same page on that. We never questioned it. It was really never about that for us. We are very passionate about reptiles, and we wanted to put the content out there. That's what really drove us to do it. Knowing, I think, what I know now, and going back and looking at what he sent to us, and I feel like there were maybe some red flags that we missed. We should have probably questioned a little bit more, because he's telling us this stuff and we never saw any of that come to light. So, but
right.
we didn't question it because it wasn't about that for us. We just wanted to put the content out there. Savannah, I consider to be one of my really good friends now. I love doing the podcast with her and with the co-host. I thought he was one of our friends too. We had never met him personally, but we really vibed with him. I liked him. We encouraged him to stay on the podcast. I felt like we're really big cheerleaders of his. He was a super nice guy. So I think for me, after this happened, like, I was hurt by that because I thought he was a really good friend of ours.
Yeah, and he had a lot of history. He had been doing it for 15 years, and, we had seen his guest count, and we had seen that he had done, conservation before, and that's really what we were standing for. We were all excited about, really all being involved in the Reptile Youth Alliance. So basically, about a year ago, we had a sponsor that had some lizards that I was really interested in working with, So basically he said that, sponsors of the show would donate animals, as the value, so if it's a time slot for X amount of time, it's worth X amount of dollars, they would end up sending that animal, in that value of that value for that sponsorship. So we were sponsoring this guest. He was a guest on the show, and we had put him on a lot of stuff. And so I mentioned to the co-host at the time, not Jessica, I mentioned to him that was something I was really interested in working with, and I was really excited about it. And so he actually told me, and we have it below, he said that he had talked to that sponsor, and the sponsor was 100% willing to do that and to exchange for the sponsorship for the lizard that I spoke about, lizards, and that the guest that we were sponsoring had also asked who was the owner of Herpentine Radio, and the host at the time said that although he was the founder, that he was making me the owner, and that was the reason I had been sending him all of these bugs and stuff. And that was supposed to, he said he was keeping track of it. We were both kind of keeping track of what the dollar amount was of that. And he'd kind of come up with some fictitious number. I will also mention that we never had passwords to anything. Jessica and I, he told us statistics of like,
right,
the stats of who was watching, but you could never confirm it, and they seemed very inflated and didn't make much sense.
And he always said that he was going to send that stuff over. He's like, oh, I'll send it over next week, and we've got messages of that as well. So, like I said, we probably should have questioned that a little bit more. I think knowing now what we know, that we were not the first people that he's done this to, that we probably should have questioned it. And we just never did, because we trusted him. He was a super nice guy, and we really thought he was trying to help us. We were trying to help him. We thought we were all in this together. So,
For sure. And I mean, a lot of good has come from it. Jessica and I got to go to Croc Fest. We met amazing people. We met a lot of people who are going to be involved with the Reptile Youth Alliance. Reptile Youth Alliance started with Jessica, but now we're really taking it and trying to, well, it's all because of Jessica, but we're really taking it big, and I'm really excited because this could really kind of take off. And so that's one of the reasons we're putting this out here, is because we really want to lay all the cards on the table. We don't want to have anything negative associated with our names at all. Right. There are a few things that, have happened recently that have kind of all compounded that we've kind of talked about. What was I going to say? There was something, it wasn't just sponsorship, but darn it, I'll remember it. But we had talked about, doing more conservation-wise, starting a chapter of the Reptile Youth Alliance with him up there. So we definitely thought that it was all, going really in a positive direction. Oh, red flags. A big red flag that we actually have, we have caught that person in a lie, is that person told us that they lost over 200 or 300 episodes. I have to go back to that message, but it was over 200. I'm pretty sure it was 300 episodes from changing from one platform to the other. So they said that there was all this content loss, and that was specifically because of the transition. Fast forward into the crazy day that transpired, which we'll go into detail. We were told by a guest that co-host had said that a previous co-host had actually deleted all of those. So this person told us that it was lost, and then told somebody else that it was deleted intentionally by a previous co-host. We were not a part of that at all. That was way before we ever came into, part of this, this whole thing. So, with the sponsorships and then with ownership of the Herpentine Radio, throughout the year and a half, the co-host would go from really being gung-ho to doing shows to, hey, I want to leave, I can't do this. And Jessica and I, again, we're cheerleaders and always saying, hey, we want you to be a part of it. We understand if you're not able to host all the time, but we really, would like you to be a part of it. And then most recently, we've had some really awesome things happen. This year, we've done like some of the most amazing interviews that we've done. We did, a really awesome legendary interview with the legendary Tom Crutchfield. I mean, this year I keep going. I can't believe these shows are getting even better and better and better. 2022 has just been awesome. We've been really excited about doing shows. Our other co-host had actually had shows scheduled up until recently, up until just a couple days ago when everything kind of went haywire. But before that, only a few things that happened really changed recently. Jessica was mentioning visiting Philadelphia, and it brought up the idea of doing slightly more controversial shows. We weren't trying to be crazy. Again, we're trying to stick with the Reptile Youth Alliance. So we're discussing this in the background, how it'll affect the cause, because really that's our end goal. We're not trying to push any narratives or any agendas that are going to be contrary to just, we just want to be, fair to everybody, and we want to be on an even playing ground, non-political, non-anything. This is about animal conservation and getting kids involved and really trying to break down those barriers. So we're not looking to put up any barriers. Co-host had come to us with a request to do a show with a gentleman who was the founder of USARK, and he is no longer a part of USARK. We all agreed that, we'd love to do an interview, but we don't want to disparage any organization. So as long as it was kept, PG and clean and not disparaging to any parties, or negative, we would do it. And it was a great interview. Right. And it wasn't, it was a really good show. So we had talked about maybe doing other ones. And we had talked about rattlesnake roundups. We had talked about some other names in the industry. But we didn't really even come to the conclusion we were doing them. And the only one that we had really talked about that I think I was even gung-ho were the rattlesnake roundups, because that is something that we definitely, want to have a stance against. I don't feel like that's a political avenue, and I don't feel like that's, opinion based. I feel like that's, a real dire situation. So again, so a few days ago, which was maybe like a week after you said that you were going to visit Philadelphia.
Oh, it wasn't even, it was the day after.
Oh, it was the day after?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that quick. It's
Oh,
just
it was
everything
today,
happens so fast. It feels
yeah.
like a lifetime. Like the
Right.
last few days have really felt like a month or two, like the way so much information has kind of come to light. So that happened. And then there was a post from our co-host that he had gotten a lizard, and he specifically said he bought it. And it was from the sponsor that, you know, Jessica made the t-shirts with the sponsorship on there. She made the signs, you know, Jessica and I were the ones doing the legwork. We were, you know, host of the show 95% of the time, if not 98% of the time. And so it just struck me as odd because the specific lizard that he got was one that he had mentioned that the sponsor had, he said promised him in the past.
Right. And this
so
we didn't hear from the sponsor. So we're solely just trusting JD on what he's telling us.
Right.
Like we had no contact with the sponsor about.
Well, I did actually, and we will say that I had reached out to the sponsor about that the lizards, and he had no idea. And I actually did this about a year ago. He really seemed like he didn't have an idea of it, and I just thought it was miscommunication.
Right.
And you know, he said he wasn't at the time able to make that deal, which was what I was told was a deal. You know, it was already done, handshake. You know. He said that wasn't something he could do at the time. Now, the co-host had come to me when I first started about donating the same, not the exact same type of lizard, but a similar type of lizard. And I was in the same position as a breeder at the time. I couldn't, you know, I needed that monetary value to replace all that I had invested in that animal. So it wasn't like I could just donate that. So when that person said to me he couldn't do it, it was really no big deal. It just was odd to me that a year and a half later, that, you know, our co-host got the exact lizard that he had specifically told me he was going to get from that person. And that person told me that he wasn't in the position to donate. But we did do sponsorship. So that deal, obviously, any deal with sponsorship from any of our guests, Jessica and I were never privy to. We never saw anything from it. So if you were a guest in the last year and a half and you did do anything for sponsorship, which we did put sponsors on shirts and things. So, I mean, I can only assume that people had created some kind of, you know, at least a verbal agreement. But anyway, we never saw anything about it. We never heard anything about it.
Right.
So I sent a really quick message, more of like, hey man, whatever happened to these, you know, and I got this message back saying, you know, I paid for these. And I said, no worries. You know, I was just wondering because we had this conversation, you know, I'm just trying to figure things out, you know, and I never, you know, I didn't even put two together. That should have been another red flag when I reached out to the sponsor the year before and he said he wasn't in that position. I didn't know if things had changed. I really wasn't trying to dig too deep into it. So literally the same minute, and we have it timestamped, that I sent to him, I was just asking because we had that conversation. He comes into our group chat between me and Jessica's unaware of this conversation between me and our co-host at all. I was just asking him about it because I'd only spoken to him about it. So he comes in and he says that he is leaving the show to focus on his own podcast, which this was the first time we'd ever heard of it, and to focus on videos with his daughter. And when I asked him why, he said it was because of health reasons. He had doctor's appointments and he wanted to spend more time with his family. I thought it was really odd, the timing. So I reached out to a previous co-host and he actually wanted to stay really positive. He really didn't want to go into detail until I kind of mentioned, you know, what happened. And he still didn't go into detail. He just confirmed that very similar things had happened with him in the sponsorship realm, that he had never received anything. He had basically done 98% of the shows.
As well as donated an animal to our co-host.
And donated and donated a very expensive animal that he produced to him. And so he was under that same, you know, that same thing, and he didn't have any of the passwords. But the kicker was that all of his shows were deleted. And that's actually when we kind of found out. We looked, and our most recent episode, which was really exciting, was gone. And then we looked into it a little further with help from some guests too, that the whole thing was gone. And in place of like we were on Speaker, that's the platform that we posted and broadcast all the shows to, and they actually would post to other things like iTunes and Spotify. That was what I forgot about earlier. About a month ago, I noticed that none of our newer episodes were uploading to Spotify, and I couldn't understand why. And I actually asked our co-host, and he said he had no idea why they weren't. Fast forward later, he actually
he didn't even know how they got to Spotify in the first place.
Yeah,
we have messages from him that clearly say that he used Speaker because they uploaded to Spotify and other platforms.
right.
So I feel like that was another red flag for us.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So I reach out to the previous, and so he had lost all of his shows. And that was what he was most upset about and concerned about. And that's even what struck a chord to even volunteer any information to us, was that, you know, he was really devastated for the people who had spent their time doing the show. You know, he has multiple jobs, businesses, and this was something he did out of a passion. And so the biggest thing to him is, you know, if he could have kept those, he said he would have made payments on, you know, the platform Speaker to keep his episodes, but those episodes were completely gone. So on Speaker, the same day that Herpentine Radio vanishes, a new podcast in our previous co-host name pops up under that same platform, taking the same position we were there, you know, that we were in there. So the only thing that I can assume is that that person who had all of the passwords deleted that profile and changed it to theirs. And then they also made a video stating why they did it. I'm sick to my stomach. I couldn't even stomach listening to the first 5 minutes, so I'm not even going to. Jessica and I had no idea. Literally, our previous guest, that episode that's gone, was supposed to be a part 1 of a 4-part series. That guest was actually supposed to be scheduled in the same morning that he said he couldn't be a part of the show any longer. He had actually scheduled us to do a show coming up this next Thursday, actually. So our show was scheduled, it's for the future. But he actually had us scheduled, and it was literally within 20 minutes. And it was only when I sent that message mentioning the sponsorship. So it was really hard to hear that he had done this with somebody else and that he had lost all those episodes. I know our guest that we had done that episode with, our previous co-host had lost all of her episodes, you know, so luckily she made a independent copy and recording of that episode. But you know, we're dumbfounded. You know, when he said he was leaving in the morning, he said he would give us the show, and he even said you guys can pay for it, which we realized, you know, he wasn't paying for it. He's
right.
You know, most definitely has like the lowest subscription, and he's not paying. And so he said, we're paying for it. And then now it's gone. And then, you know, Jessica, you know, he sent us another message midway through the day when we called him out. We said,
he just said that basically he is has legal issues. So right away, we have businesses, and we have a nonprofit, and like legal issues with something that we're tied to. We need to know about this. I was completely floored. So he said that this was a contract between him and 2013. It had nothing to do with us. We weren't bound in this contract. So it was so odd the way that things played out. And I think after we talked to the previous host with him about his episodes being deleted, and then now ours are deleted, our co-host was talking about adding someone else. And we're like, well, that's who he's going to go after next. You know, part of me thinks that the reason why Savannah and I why he asked us to be co-host on the show or join Herpentine Radio was because we both had reptile stores. We both had access to animals and to feeders. And then I don't know, I mean, at this point, like, we're both really confused. We don't know exactly what happened, and we don't have a way to get a hold of him since he blocked us. But part of me thinks about a week ago, and I'll put the text messages up, he asked for some bugs, and we both told him that we didn't have any. Now, to me, like, the timing of that message And this happening, I don't know, is it a coincidence? We're just really not sure at this point. Did he think that, he kind of let us dry and we were kind of used up and we're not sending him anything, so time to move on to the next person who can send him stuff? That's in the back of my mind, because like I said, we just don't know, because we have no way to talk to him. And then to find out, hearing things that kind of correlate that from previous hosts kind of makes it seem like that might be the case. So we really want to put it out there before anyone else donates their time, their animals, their fears, monetary value, whatever, that this could happen. Like, it could all be gone in just an instant, and there's really nothing that we can do about it. So I hate putting personal information, making videos like this. Like I said, to me, it's embarrassing that I felt for it. It's embarrassing. So yeah. I wanted to make sure that no one else feels that way, and their hard work and it's not just deleted. So
right. And at the same time, he unfriended us, remember?
Right,
and that was the thing.
I mean,
that's why
we tried to reason with him, like, hey, just give us the login information, we'll take over, and continue making. Even if he said no, you guys can make your own, and left our stuff up accessible to everyone like we wanted it to be, I think we would have been okay with that. But the fact that he deleted everything, he blocked us, we have no way to get a hold of him. And then on top
before
of that,
he blocked us, he unfriended us, and he told us he specifically unfriended us for our own safety, in terms of the litigation. Now, let's just be honest here. This podcast makes absolutely no money. It's worth nothing monetary. It's the only thing it's worth is the intellectual value.
And we were told how many people it was reaching, but we have no way to actually know if that's true. Like, we could have, who knows?
Right.
Listeners.
And he said this incident occurred in 2013. So he's telling us he's switching midway through the day. First, he's leaving to be part of his family, be with his family more, to worry about his health. And then, he says that he's looking out for us. He says in 2013, he signed over paperwork for $4,000 worth of goods, and that they were all crap, quote, is what he says, or garbage. I'm not sure. It was some form of the term of garbage. But he said that gave them rights to the show, and that he could be sued, or they're coming after him. And he said he's paying them back. And that he has to delete the show or because they own it. Now, I don't know of anybody who would spend the legal time or the legal fees to go after somebody for $4,000 9 years later.
Right.
This just doesn't make sense. Yeah. And it also doesn't make sense because it was quick during the halfway through the day. Also, it's weird because Jessica and I have noticed that he's grasped onto like keywords that he's heard us talk about. He knows that I actually had issues in litigation with somebody recently, and I confided in him and Jessica because they were my friends and we had talked about it. But it's almost like he uses the terminology that we use, and he fits it into his narrative and his storyline, which we'll kind of go over in the future when it comes to like we talked about the direction of those shows and those weird shows. So I called him out. I said, we know it was you. This is very odd that somehow you're leaving the show, and then now on the platform all of our shows are on, it's gone, and now you have a new show. And if it was the case of litigation and you have no issues with us, then why wouldn't you bring us to this new show? I mean, we literally were planning on doing a show the next week, so we don't understand. The only thing that changed is that Jessica talked about going to Philadelphia, which again, we've never met him in person, and I asked him about the lizard. That's it. That's
and I'm not going to Philadelphia to meet him. Like, I was going for another, like, a personal reason. And I just knew that because we had shipped him stuff, I knew that he lived somewhere. I didn't even know how far away it was from Philadelphia. And I asked, I said, hey, how far away are you from Philly? And he responded, and I mean, I'm just going for a very short time. So I was just thinking that we could meet up. It would be nice to meet him. because we've had this relationship for over a year. So
Yeah.
I think it's just crazy, like how things played out. And I
Right.
still like have trouble grasping like what happened. So
I know. I don't really understand it. But yeah, he unfriended us. And then when we just said, hey, you know, who's the company that's suing you? Our names are tied to this.
right,
We have quotes of you saying that I'm the owner of Herpentine Radio. So regardless if you sign the contract there and I'm a current owner, then I have privy to this information. You know, our names are tied to it. And so, you know, reaching out to people, we then heard some odd stories. We heard that our previous co-host was saying that he was leaving the show because he was sick of the reptile hobby or industry drama, quote. And then we heard from somebody else that he specifically was leaving because of the direction that Jessica and I were trying to take the show, doing call out shows. Again, we have proof that we were never trying to do call out shows. We were only trying to show two sides of the story if we ever were going to do shows. We were discussing them. We had no intention on going full force, but you can see that our co-host did and was very, very loud about his ideas when it came to that.
and so he said he didn't care about backlash. And I'm like, well, I do care about backlash. Like, I don't want that. So I don't want any kind of a backlash, and I don't want to burn bridges with anyone. And I think that it's very important to see both sides of the story. It's really easy to look at things black and white and say, like, they're in the wrong when you don't know for sure what's going on. So, yeah, I don't know. I was not on board, and I know Savannah, you can see in the text and the messages that she's like saying, well, if we do it, we're going to do both sides of the story in a respectful way. And it was more like he was kind of the one pushing to do more controversial stuff.
Right.
So
I'm not sure what happened. You know, we're doing this because of the loss of content. You know, we would love anybody. We're going to continue doing a podcast. It doesn't look like we're going to get to be able to do Herpentine again. And to be honest, it feels like this is kind of a name that's sullied at this point. And it's really sad. You know, we really feel bad. And I know the previous co-host, you know, his sentiments are the same, that, you know, he feels really bad about everybody's time that was wasted and all this amazing content that's just gone. You know, we didn't do this for anything other than like our passion about it. I loved being able to ask everybody all the questions I wanted to know without feeling guilty that I was wasting their time. I felt like it was not wasting their time because we were doing the show. And I said that multiple times on the show, you know, and it really bothers me to know that, like, that was the whole reason we were doing this, and now it's completely gone. And I don't know the reason. One of the main reasons we're doing this is a warning to other people. You know, if you're going to do something with somebody, get something in writing. You know, I've been duped a couple times in the last year, and I didn't have, it wasn't monetary. I mean, very little with the bugs and stuff. I mean, that was a lot for me, but you know, I'm not wealthy. You know, you can't get me for that. You can't get me for money. What they got me for was my time and my intellectual property, my knowledge, and, you know, my connections. And you know, it really feels terrible to be taken advantage of, especially when, you know, you're open and you want to be open with people. And it's funny because a lot of us in this industry kind of are in this industry because of our maybe distrust or unease with humans in general. And so it's very hard to think that, you know, the few people that you think you can trust, you know, you can't. And there was no reason other, you know, we're, like Jessica said, we're still trying to, you know, understand this in our head, like why, what was it? Did he plan to leave and not tell us, you know? But the keys is that he deleted all of the episode. We don't want anything disparaging about our character. We're trying to start the Reptile Youth Alliance. We've gotten sponsorships by big sponsors. You know, we don't need any bad mouthing in the industry at all. So why would we want to do this, you know? And so we're really just trying to get ahead of this, because I'm afraid now that I already heard in one day, you know, him speaking to multiple people. It really hurts me to like know what he said before, you know. And again, that day I actually reached out again to that sponsor and asked them about, did you ever talk to him about those lizards in regards to the sponsorship for me? And he said he had never spoken to him about it. And the previous co-host had said the same thing, that he had actually contacted a sponsor, that he was told that an arrangement was made, and the sponsor had no idea about that arrangement. So he set us up to look like complete fools.
Right.
And that's one of those things that feels like one of those catfishing. That feels very fraudulent to me. And I hate to use that word, but I mean, you told me one thing and then it was the complete opposite. And, it freaks me out. And you look at these stories about these catfishers stealing from people and, all these incidences, and they go after person after person. And so Jessica and I are going to be third on the list that we know of that we've confirmed that have had the same thing happen to us. And this will be a combined of 5 years worth of co-host time and efforts and money that he has taken. And that's 5 years that we know of specifically that content was deleted and that was recorded and our guests had their time taken advantage of. But we are going to continue this. I kind of said that and I lost track. We're going to do it under the Reptile Youth Alliance for now. We've got some really great ideas for some good co-hosts. We're going to try to expand and keep everything really positive, which is the light, that was the direction we wanted to keep the show, is light, informative, and really, we wanted to bring in everybody. We want it to be for reptile people. We want it to be for regular people or part-time reptile people. We want, we want this show to be for everybody. So, but again, it's really sad what happened with Herpentine Radio. If you were a sponsor, please reach out to us. We're just trying to get the full story. If you know anything, if he said anything to you, we're just trying, we're swimming against the current. I found out so much in that day when he decided to leave the show abruptly, delete all the episodes, and I was so glad that I reached out to the previous co-host, because we wouldn't have even known.
Yeah, we didn't.
We would have no idea.
I told Savannah, I was like, in the morning when I first saw that message, I was like, oh, he's not going to be on, he's not going to be doing the show with us anymore. That sucks. Then we find out another thing, then another thing, then another thing. So it was kind of like all this stuff piling on us at once, and we had no idea any of this stuff was going on. So if you have any advice for us on, if there's, at this point, I don't think that there's any way we could get that content back.
We'd love to get the content back, though.
Yeah.
We did awesome interviews this year. Tom Crutchfield took his time, time out of his day to do an amazing interview with us. There's so many other guests that did as well, and so many people who did replacement shows for their previous shows. So, some of our guests are out multiple shows. And going forward, Jessica and I are going to have complete control of the content. If we bring anybody on, we're going to make sure that everybody has an equal shared amount of control, that nobody can just take the content, because it's not just ours, and we're not making this for ourselves. There's no reason to record all this and hide it. The whole point is to get this information out there. Now, I will state that he says that there are shows that are still on YouTube. Now, when it comes to the legal situation, if there was such a litigation, then he wouldn't be able to keep it up on YouTube. So all of his excuses now are null and void. Again, he's telling different stories to everybody. We kind of have proof hearing from different people. We heard multiple stories in one day. But, the amount of shows that are on YouTube are definitely only a fraction of what were recorded. And they're under his name. And so, again, if it was him trying to protect us, why wouldn't you bring us along with the show? Or if it's your fault and you signed it, why wouldn't you set us up to do the show?
Right.
We're the ones that did this with you. And, it just, if you had been planning this and it wasn't some weird fly-by-night decision or fly-by 9 a.m. decision, why would you have been scheduling with future guests? And, I think our guests deserve to know that, but we won't know because Jessica and I are blocked. So, like I said, if you guys have any lawyers that you would suggest, or anybody that you would really suggest to, or any information, we really are open to it. And we will be posting on the Reptile Youth Alliance. We still, for some reason, I still have access to, hopefully, as of now, for the recording of the video, I still have access to our Herpentine Radio Facebook page. That could change anytime. He might get wind of that. I haven't actually checked since yesterday, so you never know. We're trying to get this out here before we lose that, but we're going to be posting it everywhere. And if you want to know any future updates, please check us out at the Reptile Youth Alliance page, Facebook, Instagram, or reptileyouthAlliance.com. This isn't something we really want to continue discussing on, like, you know, this is our one video. We're not going to continue doing this. You know, we might do some more investigating private. If something else huge comes out, you know, we definitely would do an update. If we get the information back, you know, if we get into litigation and we actually, you know, feel like we're moving forward, we definitely will give, you know, those progress reports, but we're not trying to rehash this ever again, except maybe to do investigation to help us in the future with what's going on right now. So, you know, again, Jessica said it, I said it, we didn't want to do this video. We debated doing this video, and we wouldn't have done this video if it weren't for the blocking and then hearing the disparaging words, especially with our hard work involved in these different campaigns.
I appreciate you guys, all your support throughout all the years, and we hope that you'll continue to support us. Like Savannah said, if you have any information, please reach out to us, just so if anything else we can understand this better. But we hope you all have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you again soon.